On February 28, 1978, a forest ranger found a car parked on a mountain road that no one should have been on. It wasn't broken down. It had gas in the tank. The engine started on the first try. It was just parked 70 miles in the wrong direction, on a road none of the 5 men inside it had any reason to know. They were gone, and for the next 4 months, no one knew if they were alive. For days earlier, none of this made any sense yet, because none of it had happened. Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jackie Hewitt, Ted Weiher, Gary Mathias, 5 friends from Yuba City, California, all in their 20s and early 30s, all connected through the same basketball team, the Gateway Gators, a special Olympics program for adults with intellectual disabilities and mental health conditions. They weren't strangers thrown together by tragedy. They were close, the kind of friends who showed up for each other every week, without fail. Jack Madruga, 30, drove them everywhere in his prized 1969 Mercury Montego, a car he bought with money from his Army service, and one he almost never let anyone else touch. Bill Sterling, 29, was his closest friend. Jackie Hewitt, 24, was the youngest, inseparable from Ted Weiher, 32, a gentle, routine-driven man who worked as a school janitor. And Gary Mathias, 25, the newest member of the group, a former soldier who'd been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia after his discharge. He managed it with medication, and by every account, he was managing it well. He'd kept his last appointment 3 days earlier. His next one was already scheduled. On the night of February 24th, the 5 of them drove 50 miles north to Chico, California, to watch a college basketball game, Chico State against UC Davis. It wasn't a big trip. It was routine, the kind of night they'd had a dozen times before. What made this particular night different is what was waiting for them the next morning, their own tournament, a special Olympics basketball tournament, with a trip to Los Angeles on the line for the winning team. By every account from their families, these were not men who missed things like that. Some of them had already laid their uniforms out on their beds before they left the house. The game ended around 10. On their way out of town, the group stopped at Bears Market for snacks and soda before the drive home. That's the last confirmed sighting of all 5 men together. After that, the record goes quiet. No other witness places them anywhere along their route home. Not one. Home was 50 miles south. Instead, at some point that night, the Montego turned the opposite way, northeast, up into the Plumas National Forest, onto a narrow service road that climbed toward 4,500 feet. None of them had any known reason to be there. Madruga, by every account from his family, disliked cold weather and was careful with his car to the point of being protective of it. This wasn't a road he knew, and yet that's where the car ended up, 70 miles off course, in the kind of terrain none of them were dressed for. When the men didn't come home, their families called it in almost immediately. It was completely out of character. But the search that followed looked in the wrong place, along the direct route between Chico and home. No one yet had a reason to look 70 miles the other way. It took 4 days. On February 28th, a forest ranger recognized the car from a missing persons bulletin parked on a road that was supposed to be closed for winter. What investigators found only deepened the confusion. The car had a quarter tank of gas. The engine ran fine once it was hot-wired. The keys were never found. It was stuck in shallow snow, the kind 5 grown men could likely have pushed free without much trouble. And the undercarriage, the part of the car that scrapes and scars on a rough, unfamiliar mountain road, was almost untouched, as if whoever drove it up there knew exactly where they were going. Inside, empty snack wrappers, a folded road map, half a candy bar left uneaten. There is one account from that night that investigators could never confirm and never fully dismiss either. A local man named Joseph Sean said he'd gotten his own car stuck on that same road earlier that night, and that while he sat there in pain from what turned out to be a heart attack, he saw a second set of headlights pull up behind him. He said he saw men get out. A woman, he thought, holding a baby. He called out for help. He said the group went quiet, and the lights went dark. It's important to say plainly, this is one man's account, given while he was in serious medical distress, and no other witness or piece of physical evidence has ever backed it up. But it's the only account of anyone else being there that night at all. Beyond that account, there was nothing. No trail. No further sightings. Heavy snow made anything more than a limited ground search nearly impossible. Winter closed in over the mountain and over the case. For the families, the not knowing went on for months. On June 4th, the snow had finally melted enough for people to move freely through the forest. A group of motorcyclists riding through the area noticed a broken window on an old U.S. Forest Service trailer, nearly 20 miles from where the car had been found. They looked inside. Inside, they found Ted Weiher. He had survived, alone, for somewhere between 8 and 13 weeks, likely into April, possibly into May. Investigators determined he'd died from a combination of starvation and hypothermia. There were no signs of violence, no drugs, no alcohol. He'd wrapped himself in sheets on a bed inside the trailer. His feet were severely frostbitten. We're not going to dwell on the details of the scene itself. What matters more is what was around him, because that's where this story stops making sense. The trailer had food, canned goods, dried supplies, enough to last far longer than 13 weeks. Some had clearly been eaten. Most hadn't. There was a propane heater, fully connected and functional. It was never turned on. There were matches, firewood, materials to build kindling. None of it had been used. A man died slowly, of cold and hunger, inside a trailer that had the means to prevent both. No one has ever offered an explanation for that. That fully fits. Within days, more of the group was found. Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling were located roughly 11 miles from the car, on opposite sides of the road leading toward the trailer. Both had died of hypothermia. Jackie Hewitt was found nearby, his remains scattered by animal activity in the months since. Also hypothermia. 3 men, on foot, in light coats, walking further into the mountains rather than back toward the road they'd come in on. That leaves Gary Mathias. Inside the trailer, searchers found his shoes. Not Weiher's. Weiher's shoes were never located, leading investigators to a specific, quiet theory that Mathias took them. Better shoes, for deep snow, than the ones he'd worn to a basketball game. If that's true, it means Mathias left the trailer alive, at some point, after Weiher was already too weak to stop him, or after Weiher had already died. A quarter-mile from the trailer, searchers also found 3 Forest Service blankets and a flashlight, left beside the road. And then, nothing. No further trace. Not that year. Not in the decades since. For decades, the official framing of this case was simple, even if the details never quite supported it. 5 men got lost in bad weather and didn't survive it. But that explanation has to carry a lot of weight it doesn't seem built for. It has to explain a car that wasn't stuck, a road none of them knew, driven with almost no damage to the undercarriage, keys that vanished, and a man who starved next to food and heat he never touched. Some have pointed to Gary Mathias's schizophrenia as a possible answer, the idea that some kind of episode led the group off course. But researchers who've dug into the case point out a problem with that theory too. Nobody at the game, or at the store afterward, noticed anything unusual about him that night. No family member, no witness, no store clerk. If something happened, it happened quietly, and later. Then there's the account from Joseph Shawns. The only suggestion, however uncertain, that someone else might have been on that mountain that night. It's worth repeating, that account has never been corroborated. There's no physical evidence of anyone else being present. It may be exactly what it looks like, a man in cardiac distress, in the dark, in the cold, seeing something that wasn't fully there. But it has also never been fully ruled out. For over 40 years, that's where the case sat. Unofficial theories. No resolution. A family still waiting. Then, in October of 2020, the Yuba County Sheriff's Department produced an internal memo, later released publicly through a records request in 2023, that quietly changed the case's classification. It stated that Gary Mathias is believed to be a victim of foul play, that his case remains open, officially, as a missing person and homicide investigation. No new physical evidence was released alongside it. Just a shift, in writing, in how the case is understood internally, after 4 decades of treating it as a tragic accident. We know how 4 of these men died. We know roughly where and roughly when. What we still don't know is why any of them were on that mountain in the first place. Why a careful driver took a car he loved onto a road he didn't know. Why a man who'd survived for months chose not to light a fire that was sitting right in front of him. And somewhere beyond that trailer, in the trees, there's still a question with no answer at all, one that a sheriff's department, in private, has already made up its mind about. even if the rest of us haven't. What do you think?